Isagi Yoichi is a worthy inspiration to people everywhere. He's reinvigorated the role of shonen main character, carrying many of the classic traits like never giving up, motivating the people around them to find a better way of living, often in the underdog position. Here, starting at rock bottom, the worst of the worst, having to claw viciously for every victory against those telling him he's worthless, where gradually he'll come to discover that value and talent buried deep within him. But Blue Lock is engineered to subvert some of these standards for a shonen MC. Isagi isn't the self-sacrificing all-good character, where everyone else is presented as lacking his virtue. He isn't a love letter to the value of friendship and how it brings you to higher levels of performance. Rather, Isagi's journey is about discovering his self-worth, his individualism, where sacrifices are made at the cost of his friends for better odds of victory, where dependence on those close teammates to find success is a fool's errand that will undoubtedly cage him out of any chance of becoming the world's greatest striker. Isagi's journey is about tearing himself down through sheer willpower and intellect. It's a deeper selfishness that can see his future self, demanding that the present be destroyed, so that he can undergo the necessary reconstruction to achieve greatness. Isagi is a true egoist. This is the crux of his progression throughout the series. In order to earn the title of striker, he must go for the selfish goal, against the better odds for his team and the interest of the fans. He must deny all of them, risk everything in order to ensure that it's his goals that lead to victory. This is what Isagi hunts. An idea of soccer where he'll be responsible for the most harm. It's because of his goals that the enemy team's hopes are crushed. Because a striker is a destroyer. A role that we see Isagi not only come to terms with, but become addicted to the sensation it brings, making him kind of a terrifying character. But while this is the shared purpose of everyone fighting in Blue Lock, it would be a long journey of growth as a person and a talent for Isagi to really embody this unusual ideal. Quickly though, if you like this sort of video and want to see more, it would be appreciated if you'd like and subscribe to the channel on the road to 1K. But let's get back to it. Part of the explanation for Isagi's tremendous growth in the first season is he begins at ground zero, lacking pretty much every coveted trait, seen as utterly talentless, and as such he's given the worst food. According to Isagi, he's dragging his team down in practice, the other players arriving with an understanding of what they bring to the table, a special quality that makes them stand out as a character, a weapon like every striker needs. Isagi was also yet to experience the supreme rush of taking huge risks simply to transcend the opponent. The easy win is trash, something relevant in the first episode of the season, as well as the very last, as Rin was forced to take that cheap win against Isagi, which for a striker is actually a loss. A striker is found at the place of soccer's greatest intensity, and so Isagi in the first episode, while overwhelmed by the agility of the other participants and given opportunity to freely take the weight off his back by exploiting an injured opponent, is struck by the spirit of a striker and egoist, ignited by Bachira, to go for the strongest even in his final moments. He understood that taking on terrible odds, which could spell the end of your existence, is the only way to experience the exhilaration of soccer. Here Isagi presents as Bachira's ideal player, with moves that match the monster in Bachira's head, drawing him in, the first sign of Isagi's magnetic pull on the players around him. This force only seems to emerge when he's being a striker, which has tension with his inclination towards self-loathing and looking up at better players in admiration. To take on the mantle and give his team a clear collective purpose, he would need to reinvent himself, break down deeply ingrained patterns that trigger even unconsciously, the product of his non-egoist mindset, his instinct to pass the ball to a teammate rather than go for goal. The enemy player Nico is used as a reflection of Isagi's soccer style, a highly analytic player without the guts to take a shot. By putting him face to face with his flawed way, that deep analysis he uses to find the limits of his opponent's capacity and predict their movements lets him defeat himself in a sense, knowing that had Nico took the entire burden onto himself, he would have scored, gaining the external perspective on his own shortcomings, paving the way for Isagi's rebirth into someone who's beyond those mistakes, a striker visibly seething with passion, ego, and focus, the dominant ego that would rise to the surface at the end of its clash with everyone else's. A team is born, reshaping the structure of matches to come, turning 0 into 1, building their sport from the ground up, to extract all possible skill from a person in any field. A complete grasp of the most fundamental aspects of it is a must. The intellect to create something for yourself and use it effectively goes well beyond what's required to be taught it, and a more intimate connection with soccer is forged in the Blue Lock players. It wasn't by chance that Isagi's soccer weapon was the last to arrive. His ability is particularly unconventional compared to the rest. You can't see what makes Isagi a threat, at least not directly. If you've lived with internal experiences that differ from others, it's easy to assume this is normal. So it's only when Isagi starts to show and tell others that he's able to discover what makes him special or dangerous. That capacity for danger would bring Isagi rapidly climbing respect across teams. This series is about putting together the pieces that would eventually come together to form the ultimate Isagi Yoichi, executed at a rapid pace, but also consistently throughout the season. He's able to evolve in grand spectacle about every 5 episodes. Each cause drastic technical changes to every match he plays. He gains new abilities and compiles them all together as a single recipe for success. It's not like other fantastic shows, even like Naruto, where either an ability gets overshadowed and falls into irrelevance, or is given lip service, appearing for the sake of appearing. Each of these skills in tandem become essential to Isagi's success as he faces opponents through power cliffs. And the next skill to discuss is his formula for goals, because no one wants to be a one-hit wonder. What good is a weapon that jams 90% of the time? Not good enough to be called striker. A title that's done real justice, by the way. It's vital to pack terms with meaning, something grand for a character to aspire to. Think of it as condensing every ambitious move, heartbreaking failure, ceiling-shattering success, the collective dream of everyone, the image of every symbol of excellence, and much more into just one word. Whether it be Hokage, Pirate King, the Honored One, these words hold immense weight, and Striker is no exception. That's why when Isagi declares himself Striker, in that moment of ascending triumph, it hits so hard. But like with many ideals, it's something we'll spend the majority of our life chasing, a firm goalpost for our best efforts. The next stage of Isagi's development is the direct shot, a synergistic ability with his field vision, a bridge between his primary weapon and his goal of Striker. The future that he inhabits would become a territory for his goals, not for effective passing to a superior striker. Don't slow down for anybody. Save himself from forever being relegated to the background, from being a nobody. Make a name for yourself. The difference between these two existences is concentrated down to a moment in front of the goal, striking the ball without halting its momentum, the minimum change for victory, making Isagi, as Nagi puts it, the most dangerous person on the field. Where Nico was the mirror image for Isagi, Nagi is the antithesis, a no-effort, carefree individual whose gifts were obvious from the moment he made his first move. Two varied existences that view the other as curiosities, impressive in their own rights, but mysterious. Nagi's genius versus Isagi's tenacity, and together, whether they intended or not, it accompanied each other down a road of self-discovery. Words meant as a taunt from Nagi to belittle the strength of Isagi would serve as the spark to ignite his imagination, seeing a looming monster dwelling within his potential, drowning the him of the moment. As the yet-to-be-realized genius of change, Isagi would take a step toward his true nature, the creation of a new ego, the experiences of this battle being absorbed into every fiber of his body, reassembling the man in the image of his collection of observations, within the blazing cauldron of Blue Lock, a process hammered in by the vivid metaphorical representation of the puzzle pieces coming together to give him structure, an insightful picture as yes, in many ways we're the product of our experience, and those memories we hold shape how we see everything. And when your life is truly dedicated to something, it's no surprise that these would in many ways make you who you are, a mode of existence perhaps only available to those exceptional warriors with the madness to give every bit of yourself to something for that one-of-a-kind achievement. And it's a display of just this that can jolt a sleeping giant into action. Nagi is both disheartened by this newfound sense of defeat and motivated to adapt, further bridging him and Isagi, who started so far apart, advancing that magnetic pull Isagi has for other egoists, quietly pushing the idea that even if you take a solo path to victory, achievement will inevitably cause others to flock to you. Isagi is the sort of person people can't take their eyes off of, always in anticipation of what he'll do next. For some, this is too irresistible to not be by his side, and Nagi feels this, even in abandoning his old friend. Behavior I don't condone, but it's a striking message for sure. That said, what goes up must come down. Isagi manages to inspire and advance himself to seemingly no limit, giving the illusion that he can overcome anything if it means winning. But some of the greatest stories take that immeasurable drive and talent and pit it against an even greater hurdle, something beyond our reach still. Those comrades we honed on our road to the top are not a permanent fixture, a strong retort to Isagi's wave. This series likes to mess with our sense of comfort in established group dynamics. Bachira had been there since the beginning. We might have thought he would follow Isagi all through this journey, since they have such a singular compatibility. They have the same eyes and what seems like a perfect empathy between them, able to feel what the other feels, always knowing what would suit the other on the field, enabling perfect passes and coordination. Itoshi Rin not only crushes this momentum of Isagi, he stands as a steel fortress to gaze upon, clueless to any idea of breaking through. He has all of Isagi's hard-earned skills, natural gifts, and lacks all of his weaknesses, able to give Isagi a direct acquaintance with the effect that he has on others, drowning in sheer predictive power. Isagi, who's become used to paving the way forward into a future past all others' perception, with the gift of his eyes, would be unable to make sense of the logic behind Rin's blessings, as he buried Isagi with them, leaving him with only insults that would serve to yet again fuel Isagi's creativity, another recipe for self-revolution. The defeated Isagi, while disheveled by the rude awakening, can't help but stand in admiration of the ego that had risen above his own. The next stage of Isagi's evolution as a striker is finding his genius, not relying on a team to give him those ideal passes, drawing closer to the player that can take all the credit for the score. He must control the ball and field in order to create those opportunities for success, rather than just being at the right place at the right time to receive the gift from others. In a head-to-head confrontation, Isagi would have to defeat someone who'd been sunning him all season, leaving him in the dust at every turn. Barou, one of the top egoists. From his perspective, teammates are just servants to retrieve the ball for him to plow through the enemy team. He'll never pass to anyone, winning as he pleases by his goals is his absolute principle, freedom for himself and dominion over others, an utterly selfish style. To close the gap between his dependent soccer and Barou's, breaking his basic instincts, Isagi would tear himself down through the core, a clean canvas on which to create a new person, letting every belief wash away in a matter of moments, assimilating all that makes another player who they are, seizing their skills, its adaptation of the highest level, and the optimization of human progress, again using that wonderful puzzle piece symbolism, replacing all the pieces of himself with new ones. The intensity of this process heightened by Isagi's thought deafness. Such complete focus that the calls of his teammate aren't heard. But once again, that sixth sense for Isagi's inner greatness leads Nagi to seeing him in that moment as a striker, fit to create goals from a one-on-one position against Barou, who would fall to the newly wakened devourer, shattering his mirror image, defying everyone's pitiful picture of him, and entering the territory of geniuses. But this is a small wave compared to what came next. Isagi, with a heightened ego that sees amazing players as objects for deconstruction and assimilation, would raise the ceiling past realities where controlling forces of nature like Barou, who pride themselves on freedom and copying his weapon, were simply not possible. But again, this is a game seen through the eyes of a new person, a genius, an egoist. Those eyes of astoundment and curiosity Isagi had for Barou quickly become those of a merciless predator, and we do again see a more animalistic Isagi. The dude looks hungry as shit. Isagi takes the defeated Barou onto his team. The chances of getting Bachira back are rising. The next match is centered around the idea of chemical reactions, that two or more people firing on all cylinders together cause new depths of potential to be manifested for each individual. This might seem to require cooperation from Barou that would never happen. He'd have to change for that, which is a hard line in the sand for him. On the surface, he'd rather lose everything than comply with another's will, putting Barou in perfect anti-parallel with Isagi, the master of change, which to an extent highlights the folly of Barou. His uncooperativeness ultimately becomes his greatest contribution to the skyrocketing potential of Isagi. If he refuses to join the team, then he'll be devoured. The presence of a fraudulent king is unneeded. For some people, you just can't change them and you have to accept that, but it shouldn't stop you from leading the way. According to Isagi, it's always you who has to change. Right away, this adaptation places Barou into a world that he created but never visited. He was in love with the feeling of subjugating others to a supporting role for his greatness. But the hard-headedness that arose in a person who was never pushed hard enough to imagine any other way is now the servant of Isagi. That kid he diminished as worthless several times has stolen the light of the stage. Isagi uses him as a distraction, begging to receive the past that would never come, as this is a new Isagi, with Barou just a tool in his kit. Isagi would cast a shadow over Barou, the field shining for his goals. The sheer force of Isagi's presence would cause the ball to be robbed from Barou's possession, as if it were a biological imperative for him to do the very thing he staked his life against, passing the ball. The theme of clashing egos forming a functional team, taken to new heights, turning 0 into 1 again. Isagi in that moment had become an undeniable center of the universe that Barou revolved around. Isagi crushed the spirit of a self-proclaimed king, and showed him for the first time the despair of inferiority, an emotional roller coaster in a prolonged freefall. But it's the crushing experience of Isagi's ego, that sink or swim scenario that would allow his values to be tested beyond their previous limits, as Barou is deluded by the coping mechanism of a second-rate striker. A cold grasp from even deeper in his soul shows him the fate awaiting him if he passes the ball, striking Barou with a vital surge of evolution, and at last a chemical reaction born from the continuous consumption of your teammates was born, a supremely egotistical reaction. This instills another craving in Isagi for people who can adapt the skills of others to form this web of escalating power, a never-ending chain reaction of human spirit. For this reason, Chigiri is chosen as the final piece in the destruction of Rin and the retrieval of Bachira, and this match is where a bit of tragedy is introduced to Blue Lock, giving a satisfying emotional profile to the series. Isagi and Rin exist in an exclusive realm, invisible to the rest of the team, another sort of soccer entirely, leaving Bachira in existential crisis. At level 1, it's about field positioning, passing, and scoring, but where the outcome of this collision of two geniuses will be decided is around the hearts of the players, knowing them and controlling them. Rin is a manipulator using all his teammates as puppets to provide him goals, but Isagi also finds himself enveloped in this web, pulled into a future of Rin's creation, subverting everything Isagi is used to since he achieved direct shot. Rin had dissected the player known as Isagi Yoichi. His capacity for clever plans was all in calculation, so what's left to do? While Isagi reorients his mind in a very curious way, he chooses to play his part, the role of Isagi, but uses himself in a sort of meta-mind relationship where he encapsulates himself in his own scheme just as Rin had done. He psychs out definitely Rin in the audience, but maybe even himself, sees it through to the place where Isagi loses to Rin, knowing that were this allowed to happen, Rin's inability to perceive the awakening of Isagi would lead him to a position where he could execute a new function of his weapon without any chance for Rin to adapt, having been drawn right in front of the goal. This was the first step to surpassing Rin, the #1 player in Blue Lock, becoming the most perceptive on the field. But the second and final display of this was amazing. That close connection between Isagi and Bachira would be accentuated by creating another layer of insight for Isagi, where Rin failed to see in Isagi that sudden rising tide of inspiration that would propel a player to unseen heights. The game-changing effect that's been spread throughout every soccer game up to this point. To anticipate this and plan around something that defies all rationale, something Rin is subservient to operate on the belief that this player can do anything when the time comes. And this intense belief in Bachira is both a validation of their singular friendship and an unparalleled feat of extrasensory ability. He grasped the very ego Bachira had locked away for so long, and knowing this was the essential tool for his growth, counted on him blazing through every player on Isagi's team, and there he was to intercept Bachira. However, in an unrivaled upset, luck favors Rin, the ball falls to him and he wins. Seeing Isagi's effort here fall short to luck was crushing to me as a viewer, definitely a tearjerker, but I respect it a lot, forcing us to feel the brutality of the sport. This is an unpredictable series, there'll be no glorious end for Isagi this season. In fact, his friends can no longer bear the sight of him, so we have to do our part hyping him up even more, just as I've done today. But that's all for now. This was your boy Woski discussing the excellence of Isagi's character. Like and subscribe for more Blue Lock content. I'm kind of in love with the series right now. See you later.